in terms of contract allocations and the rest of them. But one thing we have to take into consideration and ask ourselves whether the federal character principles have actually been inculcated in all that we do. And if it has not been done, then a time has come that we have to begin to think in that direction. When you hear people agitate, people of the same family, some people say we want this, some people say we want that, it means there's a problem somewhere. And the problem is usually where there is no fairness and justice, the people grumble. And when the people grumble, the issue of peace begins to look like an illusion. And in our country today, we know the challenges we are having, insecurity and all the rest. I want to sincerely thank the House Committee on Federal Character and Intergovernmental Affairs for thinking this conference worthy to take place at a time like this in Nigeria. Now, why do we need to come and sit down like this and talk to ourselves? I must say that I'm a teacher. I have not been in the position of giving jobs. But I know that we have found ourselves in a country that if you come from a particular place and there's employment in your area, if you don't engage people from your area, going back home might be a difficult task for you. And because of that, everybody is thinking about self, and then putting all our national values and our national interests behind. Now, the challenges we have, which is very true, is not just starting. It has been there. But like I said, this conference is apt. This conference is going to give the opportunities for us to assess ourselves whether we have actually practicing the federal character principles. If we have not been practicing it, what is the way forward? And I pray that at the end of this conference, all the discussions and the communiques that will arise from here, the House Committee members on federal character will go back and see how laws will be enacted to be sure that all these ills or the things that are happening as it affects employment at the national level, whether to be able to correct all the mistakes that have been made in the past. One very interesting thing about the Constitution is when the Constitution recognized the federal character principles and brought them on board, there are no sanctions as to officers who violate the federal character principle as it relates to its implementation. And it's one of the greatest weaknesses that is contained in the Constitution. I hope that this recent constitutional review that is going on is going to take into consideration by making sure that there are sanctions that are put for officers who would violate the federal character principle in whichever aspect that they are operating. Now, when we talk about employment and the federal, employment into the Nigerian civil service within the context of the federal character principle, you know, the federal character principle stated very clearly, and I would like to take a few of them and ask us very honest questions in this gathering. The number one federal character principle that is contained says, each state of the federation and the federal capital territory shall be equitably represented in all national institutions and in the public enterprises and organizations. Let me ask this honest question. Whether every state is well represented according to the federal character principles in every parastatal of the federal government. It went further to even say that each state shall have 2.75% of the total employment in each organization. And that will give us, if you multiply that by 36, it will give us 99. And then it went further to say that the federal capital territory shall take 1%, which will make it 100%. If we take these statistics and go from parastatal to parastatal, is that what we are going to see? A lot of antagonists on the principle of federal character principle say that the federal character principle is an elitist way of empowering the people that are in government, that they control what they want to do. Some people in the South, I have seen studies that show that people are saying that it is a deliberate attempt by the Northerners to take over the country. And I see another school of thought from the North saying, no, it is convenient for the Southerners. So these have been the arguments for and against the federal character principle, just because it has not been implemented the way it is supposed to be. And on the strength of that, you discover that there are many other issues that were raised. And they even stated where there are even 2 vacancies, it should be shared between the North and the South. And the question we keep asking, whether these things are being followed. If they are not followed, what are the issues? I pray that the participants that are here today are going to be looking at these issues and then be raising fundamental questions, because if you are not the one driving a car, you wouldn't know the problems that the car has. And that is what informed this conference, for people to come together. Let us talk to ourselves. Let us agree. What are the problems? Do we need to change the federal character principles? What do you think should go, or what should remain there? These are issues we should be talking. What are the impediments? What are the things that are stopping us from doing these things? And again, another school of thought that an antagonists of the federal character principle are saying that it throws away merit. So the arguments are there on and off. But like I said, for every law that we have, it has its own what? It has own advantages and disadvantages. But I tell you the truth, the federal character principles advantages are more than the disadvantages. Because that is the only thing that gives everybody a sense of belonging. That is what makes people feel that I am a Nigerian, I am a stakeholder. And in such a way, you discover that you enhance nation building. But where people perceive that they are shortchanged, they start grumbling. From grumbling, if they are not heard, it turns into a different thing. I hope that this conference is going to achieve the purpose for which it is being conducted today. It went further to say that where there are 2 vacancies, one should be given to the north and one to the south. It went further to say that in states where we don't have candidates for such positions, it should be what? It should be given to other states within the same zone. We have mentioned the 6 zones that we are talking about. But the question is that there are a lot of issues that will arise. Like I said, the issue of self has taken over. And once there is self, the issue of equity does not exist any longer. The issue of fairness does not exist any longer. All it's saying is that if we take statistics, over 50% of parastatals, when you go to such parastatals, you discover that the number of people that have the highest employment in parastatals are coming from the kingsmen of the people that headed such parastatals. I have been privileged to have served the University of Nigeria Enugu campus, for instance, and I discovered that from the vice chancellor down all lecturers to virtually cleaners, you discover that most of them are over 80 to 90% Igbos. And that is a federal parastatal. If you go to Usman Danfodio University in Sokoto, you find the same scenario. Is that the federal character principle that we are talking about? So I think we need to go back to the drawing board and say, look, if there is going to be any employment, the federal character principle must be engaged. Now, you discover that having gone through a lot of issues and discussed with people that have been in position of power, we discover that there are a lot of issues that needs to be looked at as it affects employment and within the context of the federal character principle. And we went further to make some recommendations on how to strengthen the federal character principle to ensure that anytime there's recruitment, that they are taken into consideration. You know, the number 1 criteria is that, recommendation is that chief executives of parastatal who violate the federal character principles in their recruitment into the civil service should be sanctioned, and in so doing it will serve as a deterrent to others. So once there is a machinery that is put in motion to sanction people who will not take into consideration the federal character principle when there is employment, you will see that it will improve. I've never heard that somebody has been jailed because he did employment without taking into consideration the federal character principle. I'm sure if we had such cases, 1 or 2, every chief executive will sit up to make sure that he follows the federal character principle when employment is going on. 2, the Federal Character Commission should take a comprehensive look at all government agencies and parastatals to ensure proper implementation of the federal character principle and the observance of compliance requirement. Another one is the application of merit system or meritocracy system should be considered in recruitment into the service of the Nigerian civil service so as not to jeopardize risk and professionalism. Or not to jeopardize and risk professionalism. What we are trying to say here is that when we are talking the federal character principle, we should find a way of balancing between the federal character principle and professionalism. so that at the end of the day, we don't have problems. And that is why at times we have problems with the effectiveness and efficiency of work in the civil service, because when a position is zoned to a particular place, whether the person is qualified or not qualified, all they want to do is to make sure that that place is what? Is filled. That vacancy is filled because it belongs to a particular place. And in so doing, you discover that merit is downplayed. And it affects us in the performance of our duty. So every state should have their own commissioner representing them, and the principle should trickle down to state and local government. What we are trying to say here is that there are times you see that in the federal civil service, that you see one commissioner representing 2 or 3 states. And we have just spoken about self here. Under this kind of dispensation, once any good opportunity comes, he has to think about himself and his state first before any other state. Like I said, we are humans, and the self in us will always manifest at any point in time until we put conscious effort to subdue it. I'm telling you, the issue of federal character principle would be a mirage. The appointment of the commissioners in the Federal Character Commission should not be politicized, but it should be strictly on merit, because the people who are going to drive the place are people that must have it and must know how to do it. There is need for a comprehensive database. If I ask, or be tempted to ask, I don't know whether we have a comprehensive list of all employees of all federal, parastatal, state by state, local by government, in all the parastatals. If we do, then it will show us, it's going to be mind-blowing if you begin to get this kind of statistics. I've seen statistics in some parastatals that you see that a particular region is taking over 70%. Some regions are taking up to 80%, because the people that have been heading such parastatals come from a particular part of the country. And it is not healthy for us, because it will be seen to be either a sectional and not federal. And then that's the I call strongly on the people that are saddled with the responsibility of oversight functions to do something in order to keep a database, and then trying to find ways of correcting all these ills. Because if a certain parastatal is up to about 80 to 60% of people from one zone, it means the other zones have been shortchanged. So if we have this kind of data, then subsequent employment must be seen to be done the way they are supposed to be done in order to correct some of these imbalances. These are some of the things that are going to help us as a nation. Then there's a need that the Federal Character Commission should be publishing all recruitment done biannually. Like we publish when federal government do their federal allocation, and they will publish how much goes to each state, how much goes to each local government. I think even in employment we should be doing that. That will show how transparent and how we are ready to correct the ills of the past. Or if not, all these things we are talking here will continue to be grammar, and after the grammar, we'll go back and continue to practice the same thing. But most importantly, I think a position must be put in place that is going to look at or sanction officers that will violate the federal character principle during employment processes. And we have to go further to say, even in the state, if the vacancies are given to the state, are they spread equally within the state, or a particular section of the state takes everything that goes to that state? These are issues that are fundamental. If not, the issue of marginalization will continue to be the name that will be attached when it comes to employment in Nigeria. I pray that the organizers of this meeting are going to have time to look at all the issues that are raised here and then put them together to see if laws can be put in place to correct some of these things with very serious sanctions attached to officers that will violate the federal character principle when it comes to employment, because of its importance in giving a fair and equitable state to all Nigerians who are Nigerians. Thank you very much for this privilege to mention the truth.
That was Professor Benjamin Gumal Gugong with a paper presentation on employment in Nigeria within the concept of the federal character principles. He has proposed the need to redress horizontal inequalities between different groups in Nigeria in order to correct certain imbalances in terms of position in government, public service, and even educational institution. Because according to him, every Nigerian has the right to be involved in decision-making and governance. By this, Professor Benjamin says everyone will have a sense of belonging.
For her, she comes.
Yes. The distinguished chairman, members of the high table, Madam, again, we are delighted, our able and great participants. We are delighted to be here and to take the paper on accountability and transparency in service delivery. This is taking it further from the first conversation we had, and thank God for backup, even as they look for the paper. We in Servicom were taught to have Plan B, and so I'll start with my Plan B as they get to Plan A. And so, looking at transparency and accountability in public service, these are elements that are given high priorities in ensuring that we have great reforms, in improving on the way we think and do things in the government service and public service. If you look at developed nations, what drives and stands them out is because they hold service providers accountable and they make their processes transparent. Even with recent times, a lot, and then with COVID-19, a lot of activities and a lot of service delivery processes have been turned to e-process. That's again heightening transparency. This has led to a lot of reforms. Look at the Fiscal Responsibility Commission and the like. The signing of Nigeria into open government partnership is a step towards ensuring that we have enhanced openness and transparency in the way we serve. Let's go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, OGP, Open Government Partnership. Nigeria is a member of the 70th nation that has signed in, and we have commitments made by Mr. President to enhance transparency and commitment towards governance and transacting government business. And so very quickly, the next slide. We want to look at what service is. What is service? What can we regard as service? I'll give a simple example. When we are seated at the airport and we have an announcer make some announcements, part of what we pay for when we purchase our tickets is that service of getting timely information and accurate information to us. But a lot of us don't see it as service. As simple as that announcement, it's a service rendered by fan to the traveling public. And so that service should truly serve us. And we have an incident of service failure when we speak Oyibo language by the announcer and people miss their flight. Why should it be so? I was greatly delighted when we boarded the Bon Air, and apart from announcing very clearly, simple service, what do I want to hear as a service taker? What is my priority? I just want to know when my time is, when the flight is, when I should board, if it's time for me to fly, or if there's any delay, the reason why the flight is delayed. Simple. And then we have 5 people seated, including professors, and an announcement is made, and one person, Madam, what did they say? And I turn around, Madam, did you hear what they said? That is colossal service failure. And part of why tickets are expensive is because of that service. That lady is paid to render that service, and she's not doing it well. And so we engage fan and say, it's either you people sack them, or you put them, and then they go there. I go to the customer desk and I say, we want to hear what they are saying. We are not in Oyibo land here. And we take on the legal department. Why can't we have clear announcements? And they said they've streamlined it. They must say two things. Flight number this is going to this and the time is this, period. Leave every other twisting of tongue. And so people don't go about missing their flights. So having said that, service, ultimately, is what it's about the activities carried out that will enable MDAs deliver on their mandates. They are processes and systems that must promote transparency and efficiency around what we do. It means supplying some level of skill, ingenuity, and experience in working to achieve the lofty ideals of what an MDA is set up to do. Do what you're asked to do. You have been employed to give this service. Give that service. And how do you give the service? It must be open, it must be transparent, and you must be held accountable for decisions that you take. And when it falls short, take responsibility. That's transparency and accountability. It means supplying some level of, for instance, in federal character, all the principles, adhering to it, living by it, is objective adherence to what they are set up to do. That is the service we expect of the Federal Character Commission, as already read out and listed out earlier. Next slide. Service delivery is a process and a system through which services are delivered to members of the public. Every ministry, every department, every agency has a role to play in ensuring that lives of the people are touched by government. It's also a method that creates benefits by facilitating effective change in customers, a change in their intangible assets, and even when it is tangible. What are you set up to do? That is your service. And a lot of times it's broken down through departments, it's broken down through units, special service. Example, issuance of license for trademark, for instance. That is service. How is it being done? The issue of federal character, is it transparent? Can we be held accountable? Just like the question he asked. Are CEOs being held accountable, those who employ? If, as he has proposed, and that's a very key feedback, if we can go to amend the law, or even the policy around it, so that when you do not adhere, you're jailed. One examples will help the process run better. This is a feedback that can be taken back to the drawing board for better analysis. Next slide. And so, the overriding consideration in service delivery to citizens, to government who has established MDAs, is to ensure that citizens are satisfied. How do you satisfy citizens? How do you know when a citizen is happy with that service you're rendering? Are we happy with what we are getting from federal character? Is it touching lives? For us to know, we have 5 indicators that we must look out for. 5 key elements, 5 key indicators. And we refer to them in excellent service delivery as the drivers that drive both transparency and accountability. The first one is service delivery. And overall, these 5 drivers are weighted 100%. So the first and most important is service delivery, which is 30% over 100. It means the services for which a citizen has paid for is received. Next slide. Let's quickly go to the next slide, so that the most important thing is that this service I've paid for, to see a doctor and to get treated, I got it. I have paid to post a letter. That letter was posted and it got to the destination. And so I am happy. Sometimes there could be delay, but eventually I got that service. And so people are sometimes prepared to even cope and tolerate and manage what service providers do, provided at the end that service is given. You can see that king. Can you see the king? That's somebody who has received satisfactory service. Then it takes me next to the second driver, which is the next slide. Timeliness. And I'll use the example of a hospital. If somebody is brought in through the emergency, an accident victim, for instance, is the second most important driver that promotes transparency and accountability. This indicates the dislike citizens have for delayed service. A man has just been involved in a man or a woman. Let me not, to balance the federal character. I saw when I said a man, I said, must it be a man? Okay, a man and a woman involved in motor accidents, and they were brought into a hospital, emergency case. And so, you see service providers ignore them, and they are doing other things. That time wasting, that initial wait, and even the overall wait can lead to the death of the two patients, the man and the woman. It simply means service failed totally. Even life is lost. Thank you. I'm very lucky. Please help me clap for my friend who has saved me from holding. Thank you. Thank you very much. And so, the initial wait, the overall wait, and the number of times, sometimes the family of the patient might have to go back and forth and back repeatedly to get the relevant people to give the patient attention. That's not timely. And so, timely service is the one that meets and exceeds the expectation of the patient or of the citizen. And I'll give an example. If in a hospital, I'm to wait for 30 minutes before I see a doctor, and I get to see a doctor within 15 minutes, how do you think I'll feel? Very excited. You have met and surpassed my expectation. That's delightful. That's commendable. I can now raise and praise that service provider. And so timeliness, services delayed can also lead to extreme cases, death. And so we must be conscious of timeliness as a driver of accountability and transparency in our service delivery process. And I take this to federal character. Timeliness. If we are to recruit and engage, it should also be timely. And our time standards should be specified in our service charter. And I'll get to that very shortly. The third, information. Information is very, very key. This information would include, it indicates the importance of keeping the citizens informed. I'll give an example of how budgetary provisions are now open and a bit more transparent. To every state, they now publish, if you open the newspapers, allocation to states. We can do that also for federal character. This is our feedback to them today. Publish it, let's know. And so people can now relate with data, and they can begin to talk based on informed data. It also includes basic consideration for accuracy of information. Comprehensiveness, giving us information that can help us hold you much more accountable, and that will also showcase transparency. Frequently updating the citizens about the progress. When you have issues, you're not able to let out the full information. Let them know what the challenges or the barriers or what the impediments are. And so, if this is done, then you have exonerated yourself, and the process can run effortlessly. You are taking the message to the public, and you're publishing. And so this is a very key feedback on publishing, levels of recruitment, and then the infrastructure as best as we can going forward. Even when it's not published in the newspapers, we can have it on our website so that people can have access to it. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Professionalism. And this is emphasis on the importance that citizens place on well-trained staff and equity of service. Sometimes we go to hospitals, we go to schools. We prefer some teachers in some subjects to the others because some teachers have professional touch to doing their work. Some doctors have professional touch. Some nurses will inject you and you won't even know you have taken injections. While some would inject you, you need to go for surgery because of the lump that will come out as a result of that injection. So let us have this. Citizens are also they lay emphasis on this as a driver in indicating how transparent and how accountable value for money. The consideration here is getting optimum value for money. When citizens are happy and when professionals serve them, they are very excited. They feel that money they have paid is the real reason behind that professional being paid well. They are happy, they're excited, they are satisfied. Next slide. And you can see that professional handshake. That's a sign of joy and happiness. Staff attitude. This one is very key. It said that attitude is everything. Attitude is everything. You can prepare a good meal, the best meal in a restaurant, and then you have a frowning or an abusive servant come to serve you. That meal you won't enjoy it 100%. You're eating and frowning. But you can have a meal that is not as professionally prepared, but it's packaged and served with great and broad smiles. You will so enjoy the meal because the heart, it suits that smile, suits the heart, and then you enjoy your meal. So it's the politeness and friendly staff and how empathetic and sympathetic staff are to the needs and expectations of service takers. Attitude is everything. You will get to a reception at the entrance. Even from the gate, they'll say for security reasons, they have henchmen manning their gates. It means that place is not customer friendly and sensitive. And so you are having henchmen bar citizens from coming into your office to take service. So when we get to such organizations, we score them 0 from the gate. And we do not stop there. We will discuss and say, Nigerians will not be happy coming here to take service because you're not friendly and you do not take them into consideration in setting out your service delivery process. And let me tell you, there's no way you can rate that service as transparent, and a lot of other things will be happening even right at the gate when they begin to manhandle citizens. Next slide. And so we have the citizen service equation. What actually adds up to satisfaction? As soon as the citizen walks in from the gate, the service delivery experience has started. From the gate, even from the signages before we get to the gate, we are already experiencing service process and system. And so the signages and access to get to that gate adds or subtracts from the satisfaction level. And so their experience, which is for us the moment of truth, what you have set out, the reality on ground, and then plus the expectation which had been stated in all your policy documents, in your service charter. If you put these two together, that will either make or mar. It will either satisfy or dissatisfy the customers who come to take service. And so we should ensure that we have the experience is properly laid out in such a transparent and accountable manner, and the expectations properly met so that citizens and stakeholders are happy and they are excited, even exceed those expectations, so that they are excited and delighted at the quality of services we render to them. Next slide. And so, how do we facilitate holding MDAs much more accountable and ensuring that services are transparent? We do this through what we refer to as document. We use a document called Service Charter. There's a document called Service Charter where you have all the mandates of every MDA broken down into measurable standards. If we do this and you have all of the services, how long will it take me to get a license? If I am to go to a marriage registry, what are the list of things I must bring to be able to wed in court? If they are properly stated, and all of those standards and listed items and the dues properly paid, then the standards are clear to me, the service provider, and it will guide you, the service provider, and guide the service taker, and engage both of you in a transparent manner so that you can begin to deliver efficient and effective service delivery. And so we monitor these processes through what we call Servicom compliance evaluation. We measure the quality of the services delivered. All of those standards contained in your service charter, we go with our tool approved by the federal government to measure and report if those promises in the service charter are delivered as you have stated. So we take this out and publish in the newspapers all our findings. We do not stop there. We go to the radio to say we went to the service window, this is what we saw. And so Nigerians, facilitating that Servicom is holding MDAs accountable on the quality of services they are rendering, because government pays for those services to be delivered to Nigerians. Next slide. We also go for an advocacy, linking MDA's performance to budget. That is the future. And we want to say we're working through the process of legislating aspects of Servicom, what we do, service delivery in Nigeria. That has gone through the second reading, and certainly we have introduced some sanctions so that when CEOs do not promote or support efficient and effective service delivery, their MDAs will be sanctioned. And then ultimately, we will now begin to hold people much more accountable. What you do and the money you get, we will measure and report to Mr. President, who has established Servicom. And so that's the future, and that's what we're working to achieve. Then taking the service delivery initiative to the states. Efficient and transparent service also happens in the state. We are desirous of having states also deliver transparent and accountable service, even the local governments. So we shouldn't always be looking at only federal. The subnationals too have a responsibility to ensure that their services are also transparent and we hold them accountable. When they release money to them, what do they use it for? Some of them do not go to work. So this is part of why Servicom is also taking service delivery to states and to local governments. And we have a pilot process of taking one state per geopolitical zone for now. That's the pilot we are currently working on. So transparency and accountability should happen at all levels of government, not only at the federal. It's also worthy to note that transparency and accountability are like two key elements that build trust and confidence in the system. If a process is transparent, if services serve the people, then people will trust that indeed what the MDA is set up to do is what they are doing. And so this feedback we are gathering today, we want federal character and the committee to see us as critical partners, giving a feedback so that these systems will improve and get better, so that we add more value to nation. And because if it is done, all of us stand to benefit for it. The implications of federal character and a deep understanding of these principles will address the issue of inter-ethnic strife, underdevelopment, revenue losses, unemployment, and then also the issue of security and insecurity in our evaluation. So going forward, next slide. Citizens trust that the public service will do what government has established them to do. Why? A lot of the monies, and as stated in our constitution, the monies we give to MDAs is from government. A lot of the monies are from people's taxpayers' money. And so we have the right to hold them accountable so that they will begin to serve us as should be. They need to improve. I am not here to say that we are doing some things right in some MDAs, but we need to do more. That's the message here. We need to do more, we need to improve. And so what determines whether people trust public service is performance reporting based on data, not hearsay. Data that will support that indeed, this is how much you were given, and this is how much you have used that to serve the people. Next slide. And so expectations, what users expect to receive, and then the perception is what users consider they have received. There's a gap. And so all of this feedback we are getting today is to close that gap. Let's begin to close the gap, and then we will begin to measure improvements. And so when we see improvement, trust is gradually built. Next slide. And so Nigerian legislators, the Senate, the House of Rep, the distinguished and the honorable members have the primary function of ensuring accountability and transparency in executive functions carried out by MDAs through an effective continuous oversight function. And so this is leaving a message. Let's take that function very seriously. That service rendered by the Senate, by the House of Rep, would go a long way in sanitizing and in ensuring that our processes, our services are made much more transparent, and people are held accountable. Let people take responsibility for their decisions. It's on this note, I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Please, let's appreciate.
Nena Akajumeli, Director General of Servicom, with her second paper presentation, this time on accountability transparency in service delivery. She has emphasized the need to attract the best talents to organizations and keep the best employees for the job. She also says that organizations must create a positive and inclusive domain in order to embrace good service delivery. Apart from this, she has also spoken on the need for employers to create a good workspace or environment in order to make employees focus on their duties and perform better. Accordingly, fairness, equity, justice, transparency, and commitment must be adhered to at all times.
For the moment, or at the moment, please let's take the goodwill message from the Senate President, heavily represented by Senator Stephanus D. Gyang. Please let's put our hands together for him as he comes forward to present the goodwill message.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure at this moment, even as I stand and guided by the well-established protocol, but without prejudice to that, it's still necessary for me to acknowledge the chairman of the Senate Committee on Federal Character and Intergovernmental Affairs, and distinguished senators that are here, members of the committee, the chairman of the Federal Character Commission, and commissioners that are here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and privilege as the senator representing Plateau North, Senator Estefanus Gian, to bring to you the goodwill message and remarks of the President of the Senate, His Excellency, distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawal. This very conference that is intended to enlighten the Nigerian citizenry and public on the mandate of the Federal Character Commission and its role in nation building underscores the critical element of the management of our diversity, which is a key ingredient in nation building. The Federal Republic of Nigeria is blessed with enormous human and natural resources. The population and heterogeneous setting endows us with a diversity both in terms of ethnicity and religion. The consciousness of our federal setting and diversity, as well as the heterogeneous composition of Nigeria, and the need to effectively manage such diversity has been acknowledged by our Constitution. And that's why Section 15(1) of the Constitution sets out the motto of our nation and its guiding rule, aspiration, and goal, and anchored on the desire to attain unity and faith, peace, and progress. Attainment of this lofty objective is contingent on the effective and efficacious management of our diversity. Let me say at this point that diversity is not necessarily a liability, but it is the mismanagement of diversity that breeds and makes it to become a liability. To me, rather than see our ethnic and religious diversity as fault lines, it can become our source of strength if properly and constructively managed to engender unity in diversity. One of the constitutional platforms for the management of our diversity and attainment of the motto of unity is Section 14(1), 2, and 3 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that provides for the federal character principle, which stipulates and desires that 1, promotion of national unity is very critical, and 2, commanding national loyalty, that is engendering the spirit of patriotism. So the federal character principle is a principle that is meant to promote national unity and to engender and command national loyalty. We are in a nation where most of our loyalty is first to our ethnicity, to our sectional, regional groups, to our religion, and the nation is left aside. So the federal character principle is very critical in promoting our national unity and to cause citizens to have loyalty to the nation first, rather than loyalty to ethnic groups, rather than loyalty to sectional groups, rather than loyalty to regions. That is why it is critical for everyone that is positioned that is in a position of leadership, whether as in the executive arm of government, in the judiciary, or in the legislature, or in the public service, to ensure compliance with this principle of federal character. What we are seeing in our nation is that we take advantage of our positions instead of promoting national unity and actions that will command and engender national loyalty, we give preference to our ethnic, regional, religious loyalties. And that is what the Senate President would want us to de-emphasize. Non-compliance to this constitutional provision is something that the Federal Character Commission must invoke its powers to enforce compliance by this provision of the Constitution by our ministries, departments, and agencies. Indeed, the Constitution has empowered the Commission with prosecutory powers, and it is necessary for the Commission to begin to deploy those powers to send the right signal, so that the Commission will not just be seen to be backing, but must start biting. And until the Commission begins to bite, compliance by non-compliance will continue, to be reinforced. So the Senate President is urging the Commission to ensure that it invokes its powers to ensure compliance to this very critical principle, that is to promote our national unity and command national loyalty. The chairman of our committee has already spoken that we will, as a Senate, through the committee, oversight very closely the Commission to ensure that it lives up to its constitutional responsibility of building this nation and promoting unity by the provision of the Constitution, the powers that have been vested in the Commission. So let me at this point congratulate the Commission for hosting this very conference, and believe that through this, Nigerians will be better informed about the mandate of the committee and its role in nation building, by ensuring that we ensure a situation where leaders will be altruistic, will be selfless, not leaders that are nepotistic, not leaders that, wear the toga of their ethnicity or their religion. Rather, we want leaders that will upgrade our loyalty to the nation and raise and inspire and galvanize citizens that will have loyalty to the nation. Thank you, believing that by this we will see a commission that is more robust and will deploy its powers to ensure that the federal character principle is complied with fully by our MDAs and all the arms of government in Nigeria. Thank you, and God bless you.
That was Dr. Ahmed Ibrahim Lawal, President of the Senate and Chairman National Assembly, here represented by Senator Stephanus Jam. How he has emphasized that the federal character principle is meant to promote national unity and to force citizens to have loyalty to Nigeria rather than ethnic groups. He has also said that Nigeria must remain one indivisible entity. And with that, we have come to the end of this live telecast. We hope you enjoyed while it lasted. From me and the entire production team, my name is Okundem saying, enjoy the rest of our programs.